Recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Authenticity with Alicia, the podcast where we explore burnout, the pressures of society, and our quest for identity and authenticity. I'm Alicia, and today we are joined by Stephanie Sullivan. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's got her own practice based out of Michigan and Indiana, where she does teletherapy. I'm going to link her stuff because, guys, she does great work. She also consults with other therapists. She does writing and speaking and a lot of educating folks on really important topics. Some of her specialties include anxiety, self-care, sexuality, trauma, and ethical non-monogamy, which are some of the topics we're going to be talking about today. So excited that you are here. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking time out of your day.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, you might see her cat joining. And so we're very pro animals here. It's my favorite part of doing online stuff. So well, I'm so excited to dive in. I know you in another circle as well, so I've gotten the chance to talk with you a little bit. I'm really excited to kind of dive more into some of these combos. And for anyone who, like, I think it's just meant to be that we're having this conversation on authenticity because literally your website's like motto is all about authenticity. I was like prepping, like grabbing all her links and stuff for this, and I'm like, your headline is literally lead an authentic life. Like, so authenticity is something that like you've already kind of explored and passionate about, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely. I do a lot of work within the LGBTQIA plus communities, as well as, like you said, with the ethical non-monogamous communities. And so a lot of that work is about how can people be authentic to their identities and kind of lead that life that feels most fulfilling to them.
I love it. Yes, I'm so excited to dive more into that and talking more about some of these populations that you work with. And so I kind of like to start by just talking about why do you think authenticity can be hard to express, to figure out, to embrace. Like there's your like your practice is built around it. There's a podcast for this. Like authenticity is hard work. I'm curious what you've kind of experienced on your end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really difficult. And I think it's a little bit of a practice every day, right? Because especially when we are talking about things like our identities and being authentic with ourselves and within the world, there's so many different things out there that, so many different narratives out there that maybe cause people to feel shame about their authentic selves or like literally have make them have safety concerns about their personal safety if they are their authentic selves. So there's a lot of different reasons why it can be really difficult to be authentic to ourselves out there, especially even going down into like laws and custody and things like that. Sometimes within the E&M community, there's like concerns about custody cases with children. So there's just a lot of different difficulties, I think, and a lot of shame and yeah, concern and fear. I think that surrounds that.
Spot on. And just for folks who may not know, like ENM is that ethical non-monogamy. So you might be using
Yes.
that abbreviation throughout this chat. But I think you bring up a great point where it's like, yes, authenticity is vulnerable, and it's something that we may
Mhm.
not always feel like just personally comfortable with internally. But then there's also these external factors that some people have to deal with. And it's not just, oh, I mean, shame's a huge one, but there's safety concerns, there's fear, there's laws, there's things that are external and then we internalize as well. And it's not just as easy as be like, oh, well, just embrace your authentic self. Like that can be very scary and vulnerable. So how do you, I mean, and obviously it's going to depend on every situation, every client, but how do you kind of create that space or how do you help folks navigate maybe some of those very legitimate external factors?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, it is so dependent on the person and it's a case by case situation. But a lot of it just does come to, having at least that one person that you can talk with and that you can be authentic with, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a partner, whether it's a friend, a family member, someone that you can have a safe place to talk about yourself with and your identity with, and yeah, be able to kind of explore that and also be open to change. Like I think sometimes authenticity, it's very flexible, and who we are and what we need in our life changes throughout our lifespans. So kind of it, one thing that comes to mind is almost this idea of perfectionism, right? And sometimes people, we want to be perfect, we want to kind of find that right fit and everything, but sometimes it is about finding flexibility in who we are and knowing that like authenticity isn't perfect, and it probably never will be.
No. Oh my gosh. I just like started cracking up because that's, in my own healing journey, I relate to the word perfectionist. And it's just a story that I've
Mm,
kind of talked about a few times on here already of like in my healing journey, I was like, oh yeah, I'll just add this to my to-do list. Like I'm in my healing era. I'm gonna cross it off. I'm gonna figure out who I am. And then you have this realization of like, oh, this is you kind of have to like continuously do this and you adapt and you change and you grow and you kind of have to keep asking yourself these questions and figuring this out. So I think that flexibility piece, while it can be challenging, also like very helpful in this journey.
absolutely. Yeah, I think growth and change is authentic, right? And sometimes there is this pressure on folks, like especially within the E&M communities. It's sort of like, are you monogamous? Are you ethically
Mhm.
non-monogamous? Are you polyamorous? Like, where do you fit which box? And sometimes there is that um, stigma and pressure to like kind of figure it out. And so a lot of folks come into my office kind of talking about that, and where they fit and needing to kind of find the answer. But that answer is always constantly growing and changing, just depending on who we are and what works in our lives too.
I think that's super empowering too, where it's like we don't have to have all the answers right now. And like
Yes.
creating that space, even if it's in the therapy room, like if you are in a situation where you don't have safe people in your support system right now, or there's these narratives in our society that maybe are saying one thing about you, to even have a space in the therapy room where you can let these guards down and you can say, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm feeling. Being able to process that, being able to be that authentic self and be accepted and feel safe, even in that setting, that's going to help you figure out some of these things and embrace some of these aspects, even in that setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely having, again, the right therapist maybe, or someone who is, safe to kind of talk about these things with too. There's a lot of, again, even therapists come in with our own stuff. So there's can be a lot of stigma. So finding, uh yeah, therapist who's the right fit for you, like whether that authenticity looks like, figuring out kind of an E&M side of yourself, or figuring out a spiritual side of yourself, or like literally anything. It kind of does come down to um being able to find a good therapist that will kind of not only accept but embrace these different aspects
Yes.
of yourself.
Yes. And yeah, I think that's hard too. Do you find that like the people that come to you know already that like that good fit therapist is really important, or do you think like that just happens kind of randomly where it's like, oh, I just found you online and you ended up being really good? Like, 'cause I feel like that's a newer concept of like that good fit therapist and people really reaching out for that.
Yeah, in my personal experience, it can be it kind of runs the gamut. Some people do just find me online, and it turns out to be a good fit, or it doesn't. My feelings are never hurt if, we have one or two sessions, and that's okay if I'm not the right fit for my clients. Then I can give. I do a lot of networking, so I can give referrals to people who maybe are the right fit, because I do really believe that. And then in any consultation, I say, Um, if I'm not the right fit, that's okay. Just let me know. But yeah, but some people will seek me out specifically because of articles they've read that I've written, or interviews I've given, or what my website looks like, or whatever it is that kind of draws them to me, and that can result in like a really good fit as well.
Heck yeah. And yeah, and I can just imagine like that can help maybe lower some of those barriers. Because with authenticity, I mean, I'm thinking of
Mhm,
trust and vulnerability and just maybe being able to like let some of those guards down, things we talked about. And so that good fit
mhm.
therapist can make that process. wouldn't say easy, but easier probably, and really rewarding. So, I know the ethical non-monogamy is a population that you have a lot of experience with. It's one of your specialties. And I know we kind of answered this with the barriers of being authentic in general, but are there specific barriers that you find in that community where it's really hard to show their authentic selves?
Yeah, I think so. I think what I see a lot actually is because ethical non-monogamy, it is kind of um it, people are learning more about it every day. You know, we have more articles being written about it. It's coming up in news articles and things. It's becoming a more Googled term. More there's more hits and everything like that. So what I'm kind of seeing is a lot of folks who have been maybe in monogamous relationships for the majority of their lives and who have never heard of ethical non-monogamy or polyamory or different things. They hear this word and they think, oh, I didn't even know that that was a thing that I was allowed to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm seeing actually, at least in the work that I've done and kind of a big part of the clients that I work with, it can be about this exploration of, I just heard this word, I just learned what this is.
Yeah.
I feel like that might be where I'm at. Maybe they did have a history of serial monogamy or cheating on partners in the past, even. And so it's kind of really figuring out what yeah, what that authentic piece means to them, if it is that they maybe are more polyamorous, or if they they want to, or maybe they're swingers, or maybe there's something else. It really is just kind of doing a lot of that exploration work, especially for people who are yeah, really just learning what polyamory is, or has a friend that's polyamorous, or different things like that.
I think you bring up a great point of just like the education piece can be a barrier where like we didn't really have this language, or at least like
Hmm.
common language, 10, 20, 30 plus years ago. And there was maybe a lot more stigma. And so it was like, just no, that's not a label I identify with. That might not be me. And then we're learning more research. We're seeing it maybe expressed more in our culture. And it's like, oh, maybe this is me. And being curious about it and exploring that aspect and being able to do that in that safe realm of therapy or in their relationships, whatever that looks like. That's a really good point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think that again, in my mind, a lot of things like kind of exist on a spectrum, right? And so I think what I'm kind of also seeing is that there is this kind of pressure to be, are you polyamorous or are you monogamous? What do you want in your life? But even more recently, in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, ambyamory has become a new
Mm.
term that's kind of taking on as well. Like, I myself identify as ambyamorous, and that means I can be happy in a monogamous or a polyamorous
Mm.
relationship. It really just depends on what's going on in my life, what's going on with my partner or partners, just different, so many different things means that I need different things in my
Yeah.
own life, and I can be happy kind of either way. Um, and yeah, I think that there's room for growth, I guess, in that area, so that we can be more authentic with ourselves. It's not about, like, again, putting yourself in that box or being on either end of the spectrum. There is like middle
You
room
are
there.
like one step ahead of me because I was like, I love, like, everything has pros and cons. And so I'm like, I love that we have these new terms, these new labels, and more education, more awareness on it. Then with that, it's like, do we ever feel forced to then add a
Mm,
label to us? Does that ever feel constricting? Are we forcing ourselves into things? And so I think you kind of already answered that with, again, it's just checking in on yourself, and being flexible with that. And, just figuring out what you really need and allowing, like, okay, you don't need to necessarily be on this end. We can be flexible and somewhere on a spectrum, checking in. Maybe our needs change over time. It really just depends.
absolutely. Yeah.
So I think something that you mentioned in our combos before this, is in the E&M community, like burnout can happen.
Mm,
And that, I mean, I'm a burnout. I love talking about burnout. And so I was like, oh, this is fascinating. I want to know more about this. And so can you just explain a little bit about how you've seen burnout happen in the E&M community.
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about burnout too. And I think a lot of times we talk primarily, at least in our society, about burnout within jobs and careers
Mhm.
and things like that. But I also very much see burnout happening in relationships. We can burn ourselves out because maybe we're actually a little bit of an introvert and we've been too sociable lately, and we need to kind of reload our battery, I guess. And so, yeah, I especially see that in the E&M community with those clients that I was talking about who are, they're newly learning about polyamory or E&M, and they get really excited, not wrongly so. I mean, it's a really exciting thing to realize, oh, this is the piece that's been missing. But then end up, going on 7 dates in a week for like a month or two on end. And that can definitely lead to burnout and a lot of questioning of yourself as well of, oh, wait, is this really what I need and what I
Mhm.
want? And so it really does come back to finding that balance. I've met people who can very, very happily keep and maintain, 6 or 7 relationships at a time, good, deep, connected relationships. And I've also met people who can keep and maintain only two, and that third one is, it's just not within their emotional, mental, physical capacity,
Yeah.
and leads to burnout if they add a third partner. Or on the monogamous spectrum, maybe it is really just keeping and maintaining that one partnership. So I think burnout can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people, but it's kind of about, again, coming back to that authentic piece of what is authentic to you. If you're polyamorous, you don't have to have 7 partners. If you're polyamorous, you don't even have to have 2 partners. Sometimes, like, you're really, really busy with work and kids, and you are polyamorous, but maybe you do only have the mental and emotional capacity to maintain one partnership at that time in your life. And so it kind of comes back to that authentic piece of, what is right for you in those times, and being that, having that flexible piece as well.
I could listen to like a TED talk on that. Like that's also I had my loud neighbor just like came, so I muted myself for a minute. But just like yes, right? Like, yes, we talk about it in work terms, and I think we're starting to talk about it a little bit in like home terms too, of like the mental load and being burned out at home. But the
Mm-hmm.
same concept can apply to our relationships. We're still giving parts of ourselves in these relationships. It takes effort, it takes energy. So, of course, we can burn out, whether it's just you're new and it's exciting and you're taking this all in, or you're pouring into these multiple relationships. Even one relationship we can get burned out in, and it's just listening to what we need. I think one of the quotes that you gave me was that unlimited love doesn't mean unlimited time, and I'm just like, oh
Mm.
my god, mic drop, like that's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it really does, and it really is just about, figuring out what does work for you, in whatever is going on in your life right now. And it, again, that's why I like that idea of a spectrum, or, that's where the identity piece is, being able to put a label on yourself can be an empowering piece
Mm.
too. Um, there's kind of pros and cons to each thing, but even if you do only have one partner and you can still say, like, I am polyamorous or I am ambiamorous, it kind of, um, it can be very, I don't know, rewarding or just empowering to kind of be able to say, I am this, even if I do have one partner or no partners right now, right? Maybe I just don't even have
Yeah.
capacity for any partners and I have lots of friendships and a job and kids and whatever else going on in my life.
It's like leaning into like the core, like you know who you are, and being able to lean
Yes.
into that without how it's being expressed or the certain behaviors that might be presented in the world. But it's to your core, you know those things. That does seem like the very empowering piece of that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious because, like, yeah, so with burnout, how do people help find a balance then between taking care of themselves and then caring for either their relationship or relationships?
That's a great question. I
Let me
think
just
that's
take some
something.
notes.
Yeah. I think that's something we're all learning every day, and kind of doing that check-in with ourselves. It doesn't have to be, an hour-long check-in or anything
Yeah.
like that, but just kind of, what is it that I need today? Sometimes we do need to take a minute. I said before we started, I'm getting over a cold actually right now. So, yesterday I laid on my couch and I played Nintendo Switch for a few
Yes.
hours. And that was just something that I needed.
Mm.
And so making sure that we are checking in with ourselves. It wasn't even uh I didn't have I think it's really about kind of, you don't have to put in a lot of effort or energy. It can be just asking yourself that question, like, what do I need right now? I drank lots of tea, I played a lot of Nintendo Switch. And even today I'm kind of, I took it easy this morning. I'm here today. I'm probably gonna play some Switch later today or maybe
Heck
watch a
yeah.
show or something. But that can be really, really helpful, and just kind of knowing. And again, that knowing piece, I think that's the hard piece, and that is where it is, that daily or weekly check-in, or just kind of re-navigating and repositioning. And it's not going to ever be perfect, right? We might realize a little too late that we're a little bit burnt out, but then being able to kind of pull back and say, okay, where can I give myself some space, can be really helpful as well.
Heck yeah. And I'm sure like that's how therapy can maybe be helpful too, is because I know for a lot of folks, figuring out what do I need right now, they don't always know.
Yeah.
It might be the first
Hmm.
time where they're putting themselves first, where maybe they have this inner critic in their head saying, no, you're selfish, you're lazy, you're X, Y, or Z. Um, but we also know like we're going to get irritable and burned out and, just spread thin if we don't take care of ourselves. And therapy can be a great
Hmm.
space where we can figure out, well, where is that balance? How can we pour into these people that we care about without sacrificing our own health at times?
Yeah, exactly. And just even just knowing what are those cues of burnout for yourself. It
Mhm.
might be that irritability. It might be that you start eating a lot of sugar. It might be that you start wanting to sleep all day, right? Like, what are those signs and symptoms of burnout that um, can you recognize those, and can you look at them without trying to like shove them on under the rug and like keep going?
Yeah, yeah, that can be hard, but I think that's a good like
Hmm.
awareness step though, right? Where we might not
Yes.
feel comfortable fully prioritizing ourselves right now, but can we start recognizing those signs? Can we start tuning into ourselves? Can we start getting awareness of those things? That's a huge first step.
Hmm.
And one that doesn't need to be overlooked. So if it's terrifying to be like, no, 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 I can't, sacrifice these things. That's okay. We got to start somewhere. So I really like that. Any like other tips for balance or how having to care for yourself when you are juggling maybe multiple relationships?
Yeah. Again, I really do think it just depends on like the person, but one of the
That's
biggest things with that is, what kind of noticing, what does each relationship kind of bring to your life, and what
mm,
kind of what do you add to others' lives, and what are you adding to their lives
mhm,
as well, right? Like, sometimes even if I'm thinking about friendships, like, maybe the friendship we need at the moment when I'm having a hard day is like that cheerleader friend who's just like,
yes.
you got this, you can do whatever you need to do. And then at other times in my life, I might need a friend who's a little bit more of a challenger, who's like, oh,
Mhm.
are you sure you want to be doing that? Like, maybe that's not the healthiest thing for you. Right. And again, that's not that awareness piece,
Yeah.
but what, even especially thinking about burnout, if you're noticing yourself falling into that burnout, maybe it is just being able to call on that friend or that partner who's willing to lay on the couch with you and watch 7 episodes of Netflix of something with you, so that you can kind of recharge and just cuddle and kind of get what you need. But I think a lot of it does kind of come back to, again, yeah, tuning into yourself and noticing, what are your relationships bringing to you, and then what are you bringing to those relationships too, or are sometimes unfortunately we do love someone, but they might be adding to our burnout a little bit in
Mm,
some ways, or it might be really, really difficult for us to maintain that relationship for some reason. And so kind of, again, addressing that, or looking at that at least, and just becoming aware of it,
mhm.
um, would be that first step.
I love that. And yeah, I love the idea of like these different types of relationships, whether it's friendships or different things we can get out of it. I totally have that friend where I'm like, I want to watch mindless episodes of Bachelor in Paradise and not
Mhm.
like worry about anything. And it's okay that we have those different roles. And sometimes if we're needing something that maybe we're not getting, that's also okay too. And just thinking about it again, just maybe like a lot, giving yourself that permission to reflect on it, have that awareness. Doesn't mean you have to immediately go into an action stage. You can just think about it. Notice if they're draining or maybe refilling that cup. And then just doing whatever you need to do for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Um, One thing that I like to ask folks is how are you practicing authenticity or working on being authentic this week?
Mhm. Um, well, playing Nintendo Switch, because I am getting over a cold.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think I try to practice that every day. I'm pretty authentic with my clients. I let them know when I am feeling a little bit under the weather, or, the even just the other day I had to cancel a session, unfortunately, because of my hot water heater was being replaced and there was like maintenance and
Oh
lots of
gosh.
chaos going on in my home. So I was just very open with my client. I said, I'm so sorry, I do have to reschedule. Otherwise, you're going to hear lots of talking in the background. I wanted to give my client that space.
Yeah.
For me to be there. But otherwise, like in my personal life, I really do try to utilize a lot of humor as well, and just kind of adapt and be authentic in lots of different ways. My cats always help keep me authentic as well because sometimes they're crying in the background and I have to
For real.
I have to call them over and say, okay, come here.
I love it.
You're being loud. Okay, let's calm down.
I wish we could all just be as authentic as cats. Like they are
Mm.
goals. But no, I love the different aspects of authenticity that you're working on. Of part of it's just listening to what your body needs right now when you're needing to
Yeah.
recover from something. Showing that authentic aspects with your clients. It helps model and probably creates that safety for them to be authentic with you. And then yeah, like needing to kind of take cancel sessions sometimes. It's never fun, but we have to do that. And then in our personal life, sounds like humor and attending to the cats. Those are always good anchors, it sounds like.
Yeah, having you reflect that back at me, the word that's coming to my mind is transparency. Like, I just
Oh,
kind of practicing that transparency and that openness. I think
yes.
that's one of the biggest things of authenticity for myself, my own practice.
Yes. I like that a lot. And I think too, like for at least in the therapy role, authenticity can be hard sometimes because we are bound by certain laws and ethics where it's like we have to again spectrum I'm thinking right where we can't always be 100% authentic because we
Mhm.
have to be in the therapist role doesn't mean we have to be a robot either, and so transparency might be a way where we can show some of that with our clients and build that relationship and in our personal lives too, so I really like that word transparency.
Thank you, yeah. I appreciate you helping me get to it because just hearing you reflect it, I was like, "Oh, that's the word."
Transparency. Add that to, oh yeah, I love that one. Well, thank you so much for your time, Stephanie. This has been a great conversation. I'm going to post Stephanie's website, her I think your socials. Yeah, we're going to send folks her way. So she writes good articles. You've been on other podcasts before where you talk about things. So if this is a topic that you're interested in, Stephanie's got lots of great resources and educational tools for this. I hope you get recover from your sickness. I hope you get lots of cat cuddles. But thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for inviting me. It was wonderful to have this conversation.
Of course. And so until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and remember that the world needs the real you. So let's explore that authenticity together. Until next time.